Okay, kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to our live Q&A on the 15th of September 2022. And haere mai ki te wiki o te reo Māori. It is Te Reo Māori week, so kia ora koutou, everybody. Well, I'm Thomas McGrath. I'm a consultant at Wright, and I'm going to be taking you through our live Q&A today. And I just want to give a shout out here. This live Q&A is brought to you by Wright Online, which is our live library of amazing short videos and resources and things that you can access to learn at your own pace, so that you can learn to communicate as best as you possibly can. You can try this out if you are interested in having a go. Go to wrightonline.co.nz, and there's lots of information there for you. So, and this video will be uploaded to the Wright Online library once we're done. So, meetings and minutes. The title of this Q&A is Making Minutes. A little bit of a pun there. We're going to be focusing on creating minutes, some of the skills that it takes to be a minute taker and a minute writer. But we're also going to be looking at meetings, because one thing that can make minutes a lot easier or harder to write is the quality of the meeting. So our focus will be on minute writing, but we're going to be talking about meetings as well. Now, I'd like to welcome a couple of friendly faces to the Q&A today. So we've got two of our fantastic Wright consultants, Claire Hewitt and Colleen Trolove, who are going to join us. Colleen from Wellington and Claire from Auckland. So kia ora kōrua, welcome to you both. Colleen, can you just give us a very quick introduction for yourself?
Okay, kia ora koutou. I'm Colleen. I'm a consultant at Wright, and minutes have a particular place in my heart. I think it was because my first corporate job was as an admin person, and minutes were the part that I hated about the job. And when I came to Wright and I did our minute writing course, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have done this years ago. So hopefully, hopefully you find these tips useful to you as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Colleen. Thank you very much for joining us. And Claire, just a quick introduction for yourself.
Yeah, kia ora, everybody. Like Colleen, I love our minute writing course, and I think one of the reasons is it seems to be one of those things that you just get thrust into in a job. All of a sudden, one day somebody just asks you to do the minutes, and you're kind of expected to know what to do. And people can go a really long way just kind of figuring it out by trial and error. So I think it's a great thing to just take a moment to get yourself properly set up for.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, lovely. If you're watching, thank you. Thank you for registering and showing your interest. You can participate in this. This is a live Q&A. So you'll see down the bottom bar here on Zoom, there is a Q&A function. If you click that button, you can register a question, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as we possibly can in this tight 30-minute slot that we have. So feel free to submit a question and we will get to it. So let's start with some opening thoughts. Colleen, if you were going to give just a couple of things that just from the top of your head are most important when we think about minute writing, what would they be?
I think minutes are one of the most diverse types of things you can write. They can be tiny, they can be really long. So one of the ways to know that you're doing it right is to be really clear about the purpose of the minutes. Like, why is this thing being recorded anyway? If you know that, you're much more likely to get the volume of material right. So that's probably my top tip.
Great. Okay. And Claire, just something for you, the top thing for you when minutes come to mind.
Yeah, for me, it's absolutely the same thing as being really clear about the purpose, and that goes for the meeting as well. And then to expand on what Colleen said, just understanding who's going to be reading the minutes and what they'll be using them for. They're just looking to remind themselves of the action that can help you navigate all of the other decisions.
Awesome. Lovely. Okay, well, let's get into it. We're going to go through a few I've got some questions to pose to the both of you, and then we'll get into some of your questions that you've submitted. We've already got a few coming in, so that's fantastic. So the first question I have seems like maybe an obvious one, but a lot of things have changed in recent years with being able to do things online like this. So my question, first of all, is why do we have meetings? Again, seems like an obvious question, But if we're thinking about purpose and we're thinking about, you know, our role as minute takers, Colleen, why do we have meetings?
I think it's about connection. It's one thing to be in a team with people, but if you're not meeting with them, I don't know, it's a part of the human condition. We need to be around people, we need to hear from them, we need to share with them to work well, I think. Yeah.
Cool. Claire, any thoughts on that one? Why do we have meetings at all?
Yeah, I think we're always going to have those meetings that are just sort of part of the process, especially if there's really dispersed groups and you need to get everybody together. But as Colleen said, it's about connecting and collaborating, and some things are just better discussed in person. And I think more than ever, we're aware of that, where the real value is in connecting with people. Some things can be done, you know, kind of remotely or at different times, but there's some things that just go faster with the meeting.
Awesome. Okay, so if we're preparing for a meeting and we really want it to go well, there are, you know, a lot of people say great preparation makes for great success. So what are the things that we can do to prepare a meeting? Maybe we're the minute taker or we're helping with the meeting, to make sure that that meeting goes really successful. I'll start with you on this one, Claire. What are some thoughts on this one?
I think as we said before, the purpose of the meeting is important, and also the type of meeting. So if it's a more formal meeting, like a committee or a board, and there's a chair, then I think connecting with the chair before the meeting is one of the best things you can do. If you're working together and you've got a good relationship, it will just make the whole meeting more effective for everybody, but also make it easier to take the minutes.
Nice one. Okay. Colleen, tips for you, ideal meeting preparation?
I reckon making sure that the right people are actually there is very important. Not having too many people there so that you can actually get through the content you want to get through. Making sure people know in advance what's going to be covered. If you can get your thoughts sorted beforehand, you can, you know, come in shooting from the hip. It can help if the people have their roles defined clearly as well. So are you there just to observe? Are you there because you're in the thick of it and you're wanting to help make things happen? What's the role of the minute taker? What's the role of the chair? Are there other specific roles? I also think in a physical meeting, literally the place that you are has a huge effect on the success of the meeting. Are you warm enough? Are the chairs comfortable enough? Are people going to go to sleep because it's too hot or freeze because it's too cold? As that relates to online meetings, it's probably more about the quality of the tech and people's comfort with the medium that you're using.
Cool. So some people things, but also some real physical, like place things as well. Lovely. Okay. Well, let's do the opposite of that. What are some of the most common traps that either of you would see when people are, you know, in meetings or they're preparing for meetings? What are some things that people just generally, like common mistakes that lead to meetings not going as well as they could? Colleen, anything on the top of your head for that one?
Group dynamics have a lot to do, I think, with meetings not going well. So, I mean, that can have to do with dominant personalities or something that's not well chaired. So, you know, it just gets away on everybody. That can have to do with people being quiet or disengaged, which can have to do with how the prep for the meeting or how the meeting's framed beforehand. And I think another big thing that can cause problems is if people come thinking that their role is simply to look at things from all angles. Like that rarely gets progress, even though it can feel satisfying at the time.
And is that sometimes because people want to justify why they're there? They want to have something to do?
It can be. It can honestly be that they just think they're there to give to give their thoughts, and so they do. Without necessarily having a clear sense of where everyone's trying to get to.
Claire, any thoughts on this one? Any common traps that you see just generally when we're approaching meetings or set up for meetings?
Yeah, I think failing to be really clear when you invite everybody about what you're hoping to achieve with the meeting and the purpose. Yeah, as Colleen said, if you just have topics, then perhaps people will sort of make up their own minds about what they're going to do with those, and maybe they think it's just to really investigate them. But if you're a bit clearer about we want to confirm our decision for X or something like that, you're probably setting yourself up for success a bit more.
Lovely. Okay, let's go to a question here. So we've got, this is more of a statement from Venice. I hope I've said that correctly. Claire is right. Usually a woman that is asked to take the minutes and it is seen as a natural skill, but it is actually a skill. Completely agree. It's something that you can be good at or not. So hopefully these tips are helpful for you, Venice. And here is one from Corinna. Is there a difference between how you'd take official minutes that are legally required versus less formal notes about what happened at a meeting? Do either of you have any thoughts on that one?
There's a few things that you sort of that are expected in minutes that are considered a formal record, like a list of who was there, a signature. They're usually expected to be signed off by the chair. Often they'll be expected to have been confirmed by the meeting attendees as a true and accurate record. Yeah, I think those are probably the main things that you would be careful to do if you were wanting it to be, you know, a good legal record.
Yep, cool. Any other thoughts there, Claire?
Yeah, I agree. And it again comes back to that purpose. If your purpose is for a legal record, then probably you're going to have a little bit more formal structure. So that will make minute taking easier. And you also want to take care to record any decisions that are made quite carefully and how they were made and who agreed. And the other thing is your tense is quite important in some of those legal meetings, because you want to be very clear about when things happen, when decisions were made, in case people need to look back.
Cool. Okay, thank you for your question there, Corinna. Okay, we'll get to a couple of questions shortly. Keep them coming in, everybody. Let's go very high level here. What is the key to good minute writing? So it is a skill. We've stated it quite clearly there. It's not just something that you can fall into and do amazingly. Maybe you can, I don't know. But what are the things when you think about great minute writing? We'll start with you, Claire. What makes for great minutes?
I think great minutes, of course, are clear and plain for everybody to understand, but also they don't try to capture every piece of conversation. They really focus on what's important. And in a lot of meetings, that's just the action. So who's committing to do what by when? Often we have this instinct to record as much as we can, and the more we write down, the better it is. But it's quite easy for things to get lost, and then it's less likely that people are going to read through and find the pieces they want. So I think keeping it really focused on the bits you need makes great minutes.
Awesome. Colleen?
I find a good template helps me. If the template itself is helping me to listen in a focused way, I find I can listen better and more actively and more accurately. And again, back to the purpose, same as Claire. If the purpose is clearly defined, it's way easier to decide the level of detail that you need to record.
And actually, I don't think we should have mentioned that in the preparation for a minute. If you have a really good template set up, you can have, you know, all of the names of expected attendees and just move them into the apologies or not. Just getting your template ready makes a massive difference to your job for taking minutes.
Okay, lovely. Let's go to a question here, which is slightly related to the setup and the template. So someone has asked here, what can you do if people required to be at the meeting don't send apologies, don't attend, and don't provide updates ahead of the meeting? It's a tricky one. Any advice on managing something like that?
In quite formal meetings, I often take a lead from the chair. Sometimes the chair, depending on the relationship, might just say, I'll pop them in apologies. But other times, if they're particularly conscious of someone's attendance, then they might just put it absent. So I would usually take the lead off the chair for that kind of thing.
Cool. Any thoughts on that, Colleen?
The only thing I'd add is if it's a meeting where people are paid to be there, like a board meeting, it's you kind of have to, you know, make it obvious if they actually were there or not.
Yes. Lovely. Okay. All right. Let's go to I have a question about like making your life easy as a minute taker. We've talked about some of the things that make for a great minute writing document. So some of the preparation and things. Let's talk about in the meeting. What are some things that you can do to make your life easier as a minute writer? Claire, what are some tips that you got for this one?
I think the big tip is recognize that it's a really hard job. Cognitively, it's hard. You're trying to write, you're trying to interpret things, you're trying to put it down clearly, you're trying to listen to often lots of discussion happening at the same time, see where you are on that agenda. So I think first of all, just recognizing that's a really big job. So it's gonna be kind of mentally quite tiring. So make yourself comfortable, make sure that you've got a glass of water and your lighting's good and you can look out the window and just take a breath if you need to.
Lovely. Colleen?
Cool. Being able to touch type, I find really helps.
I bet.
One thing I personally am not a fan of doing is recording the meeting. I know a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they're so worried they won't capture everything that they take in a recorder, and then you've given yourself double the job because no doubt you will have to attend that meeting a second time back at your desk listening to the recording. And that's probably a waste of your time. Unless of course you need to do it as a security blanket, I wouldn't suggest it. Another thing that makes it easier is if you do get lost, just speak up. Like, minute takers aren't supposed to be superheroes. Like, just say, how would you like that minuted? I'm sorry, I'm lost. What did you want me to record there? And, they'll probably come up with a fabulous summary that you can type down to capture the last 10 minutes worth of discussion. One other thing that can make a big difference, depending on your relationship with the chairperson sitting beside them, can really help. It helps you act more like a team. They can glance at your screen and see that you're recording what they were hoping you would record. It tends to make for a better vibe.
So that's a really vital relationship, isn't it? The chair and the minute taker. We've got a question here from Meryl, and this might be down to defining that relationship really clearly. Her question is, how do you diffuse tension when meeting participants vehemently disagree on things? What do we do there? So we're kind of focusing here on minutes. Say you're the minute taker and you're in the meeting. Is there anything that you can do, or is that really a chairperson's job?
Claire?
Yeah, I would hope that the chair would, I think that would fit with the chair's role. More than anything, I guess, as a minute taker, if it's getting difficult to follow the conversation and then perhaps that could be an opportunity to just check in, and probably even then I might direct that question toward the chair.
Is there anything, Colleen, you mentioned before the line, how would you like that minuted? Are there any other kind of prompting lines that we could give as a minute taker just to maybe suggest that things are going down the wrong path or something isn't quite right?
I think one thing that could happen when people are really disagreeing, often they want it specifically noted that they disagree. And so one way to sort of, I don't know, help create a sense of a full stop to something unproductive might be to say, should I record that this was a disagreement between X and Y on this topic? Just as a way of helping to give it a sense of finality.
Cool, great answer. Any other thoughts on that one, Claire?
Maybe not so much on the disagreement, but I think you asked about useful prompts, and sometimes as a minute taker, if I've found that the discussion's going kind of off down a side road that wasn't intended, just saying, oh, could you just let me know where we are on the agenda, or would you like me to start a new agenda item?
Great, lovely tips. Okay, well, kind of similar to this, Shari has asked us, is it advisable to be chair and minute taker, or do you always need to have separate people? Are there any times where you would kind of try and manage both roles, or would you just always advise against it? What do you think, Cole?
In an extremely small meeting, it might be doable, like me and a client. Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. It's just probably going to be very stressful and very hard to do both roles. I wouldn't recommend it.
Any thoughts, Claire?
I would agree. A formal meeting, that would absolutely need to be separate roles, but even a small team meeting, I think if you've got 3 people, everybody's going to have a more kind of effective use of time if one person's sort of leading and managing the meter in the chair role and someone else is just taking the notes. I think it's too much to do both.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much, Shari, for your question there. Okay, so we've got a few questions rolling in, and I'm going to summarize a few of them. Some of them are about hybrid meetings, so kind of where you've got a few people in the room, some people on Zoom or Teams or whatever kind of software you're using. Let's take a moment to talk about this kind of new new meeting environment, and what do we do as minute takers, minute writers, to make sure that we can be successful in the meeting and take good minutes. Claire, have you got any general tips just when you're in a hybrid meeting? How do you manage that well?
I think setting up the kind of rules of play at the start, particularly if some people are in the room together, just explaining that it will be tricky to take minutes if there's conversations happening in the room and online. So one person speaking at a time.
Cool. Colleen, any thoughts on that? Hybrid meetings?
I reckon if the world was a perfect place, I'd choose to be in the room with the other people in the room, because it's easier to identify who's speaking, and the people in the room, when you're on, say, Zoom or Teams, looking at a room full of tiny dots, it's very hard to be able to keep up with who said what. Whereas if you're in the room, much easier to do that. Checking the chat regularly can help if you're in case people, and making sure that if you don't know the people who are online, I mean, get them to rename themselves as the name that they want to be called. It's incredibly helpful in terms of your limited memory capacity.
Fantastic. Okay, lovely. Well, let's get on to the publishing side of minute writing. So we've talked about preparing for meetings, we've talked about being in the meeting. Let's talk about now you've got to produce this lovely minutes document, and you don't want to spend a bazillion years on it. We want to be making minutes here. Let's talk about our top tips for publishing actual written minutes. Claire, what are some things for you that are really important when a minute taker is writing their write-up of the meeting?
Well, if you've got your template ready to go, it's going to be much faster. And if it's more of a kind of working meeting, figuring out how something's going to happen, who's doing what, ideally you should be able to just circulate that pretty much as you wrap the meeting, or very quickly afterwards. And I would say verbs are awesome. Rather than just say something like clear website, say clear refresh website or clear review website, so that when people go back to look at it and they've had busy days in between, it's really clear what they need to do.
Lovely. Okay. Colleen, any tips for writing those minutes?
I think layout has a huge effect on minutes, and if you can get a good, solid, repeatable layout that you can plug your minutes into, that will probably save you a lot of stress, and it will probably make other people want to read them more. So you can do layout in terms of headings and text underneath, or you could do a table style layout. Either tend to work really well for people. One thing that people in meetings tend to speak in a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms. And for the minutes to have longevity or to make sense to anyone who wasn't there, often your job will be to interpret that jargon and turn it into something that is more likely to stand the test of time. Deciding how you'll refer to people can also be a good blanket decision to make. So are we going to use first names? Are we going to use job titles? Job titles might work if something's being circulated outside your organization or where hierarchy might matter. Some people even go with just initials of people. From a plain language point of view, I wouldn't be recommending that, but it's a choice. Yeah, other than that, keeping your sentences short, making sure they're complete sentences. So often when we're taking the notes, we're just writing little notes that help us remember what was said. So actually taking the time to turn them into proper sentences can really help.
Nice.
Yeah.
And can I give one more little tip about the actual process? Yes. Okay. Something I learned years ago that I just find fabulously helpful. Book the room. If you're having the meeting in a room, book the room for 15 minutes after the meeting and stay in the room, just smash them out then and there, and don't leave the room until they're done. And it really helps with the whole mental load of, oh my goodness, I've got to get these things out, because you've done it already.
That's a good one, because I always find that that's a ticket, that's like an item that hangs on my to-do list for a while, and it takes me a bit to get to. So that is a good tip. Thank you. Now, Claire, you have a tip as well. What is your one?
Yeah, the names is important to understand how you're going to do that. And I think generally for smaller teams, just people's first name is good, but for more formal meetings, you'll need to do something different. And something that has really helped me is loading in names and titles in the auto text. And it's also really good if you're in that situation where you're taking minutes and it's up on the screen so that everyone can see, because especially if you've got tricky names, you know that's going to be spelt right every time, and it's just fast to get down there.
Right, nice one. Okay, we have a question here from Linda. How do you avoid the passive voice in minutes when you are reporting decisions and comments? Any thoughts on that one?
I think getting clear about how you're going to name people can really help with that. So again, sometimes that happens because in your mind you're trying to quickly think through, should I be using their title or their name? But if you've already made that decision, it's much easier to just put the person and then what happened, or the committee and then what happened.
Cool, great advice, thank you. All right, we have a couple of minutes left, so if you've got any final questions, get them in here. We have a couple of questions about the order of the meeting. So is there any particular order that things should be in for us to, minute effectively or have a good meeting? Do either of you have any thoughts on that, about the structure of the meeting and making sure that that's going to be really efficient?
If there's a standing agenda, it's usually most easy to stick to it. It's really frustrating when you go to a meeting having something important to talk about and all these little things take up the time and it is a rush thing or doesn't end up happening at all. So being really determined about prioritizing the important things and giving them the time they deserve is pretty important. Yeah.
Nice one. Claire, thoughts for you?
Yeah, I would agree with what Colleen said, absolutely. And if you're really clear about the purpose, also you're going to make sure that those most important things do get handled. And the other thing I would say is make sure that every time you've got space at the end of the meeting to just confirm the actions or confirm whatever decision you make or what happened.
Lovely. Great. Okay, good stuff. Now we have a question here from Prudence. Thank you for your question very much. The question is, do you have any good tips for practicing? So we might not always get the opportunity to be in real meetings. Do you have any tips off the top of your head that you could think of that would be very helpful if someone wanted to practice getting better at minute writing? Maybe Colleen, you've got...
I'm just imagining myself trying to take minutes off TV programs.
Exactly what I was doing, Colleen.
Yeah.
I'm guessing something like that. Give yourself some kind of visual and auditory stuff that you have to summarize in some way. Even if that is summarizing your kids' discussion at dinner time. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I would say a couple of tips is one, if you're in a workplace and you volunteer to take some minutes to practice, I think you will probably get a lot of takers. People will be glad to have someone help them. And like Colleen said, if you're at home and you practice there, it's quite interesting, especially if you've got arguing kids. You say, I'm going to practice my minutes and write down what you say. It can really slow down the conversation, get rid of some of that fluff. So I would try all of those things.
That's fantastic. Lovely. Okay, well, thank you, Prudence. That is the last question we will be able to get to. It is 3:30. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this live Write Q&A. This has been hosted by Write Online, our online video library. I'm going to share some details just as we finish if you're interested in signing up for a free trial there. This video is going to be uploaded so that you can review and get all of the tips, relive the magic of these minute writing tips. So thank you very much, Colleen. Thank you very much, Claire, for joining us. And have a great rest of your Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, e kōnei rā, and we hope to see you again shortly. See you later.
Kia ora.
Thank you.